Oop. Hi. Hey, all. I am Victor E. I just want to talk today real quick about toxicity. So when we talk about toxicity, what we're referring to is woundedness. So if you think of a wound, let's say that happened in childhood, which is when most wounds happen, a wound being a belief that doesn't serve, or maybe more to the point, serves to harm or to weaken or debilitate personal experience, how you experience the world. So imagine a wound that's become infected or gangrenous, something that hasn't been shown shown the spotlight of awareness that says, hey, this is the wound. It's gonna fester. It's gonna maybe have some smell to it. Getting a little too literal there. But that's essentially what toxicity is how the wound plays out. And oftentimes that's because we don't have the options to choose other than what we know. So I think a few off the top of my head are breathing, distancing yourself a little bit from your thoughts, observing your thoughts, nonviolent communication, and I think asking for space is one of the biggest ones for me personally. And this is not to say that I don't have my own baggage. This is kind of why I'm doing these videos, to unpack and share. And, if you have your experiences, you can totally comment below, and definitely comment what you think. And if you think this helps anybody, definitely share. But when we have options, that's when we can really start, at least, to make the transition out of the habitual, out of the beaten path, and do the work towards beating in a new path. And so by that, I mean, when I had a lot less experience in managing my anger, my hurt is what it was, I just didn't know of any other options, and it got to the point where it hurt too much to keep doing the same old thing. It hurt the people around me. It hurt me. It hurt my reputation. It just hurt. There's a lot of hurt. Hurt people. Old adage rings true. But as I started meditating, as I started breathing, observing my thoughts and breathing, this thing started happening. And there was a little bit more space in between the trigger and the reaction. Right, so because I was in the Marines, we get weaponized as people. All the hurt that leads us to making the choice to enlisting in the first place gets weaponized. All the ways in which we feel we can't love or be loved is kind of exploited. And we can branch off into a whole thing about, the military and where we stand on that. But staying on topic here, when I started to observe that there was a little bit more space in between my reaction is when I got to choose a response. And what I learned was that, breathing was a better option than acting on the anger, acting on the hurt, acting on the sadness, acting on the depression, on the suicidal ideation, any of these things that I was going through, that you may be going through. And one of the hardest things about it was learning to forgive myself and be patient going through this process. So as I'm learning to manage my anger, I'm still failing at not acting on it. So I have to, it was really weird. It was like being, kind of just being along for the ride. Sometimes it was like being an observer to something that was happening that I knew was wrong. And yet, because of my addiction to the stress, my habituated response or reaction to the stress hormones, and feeling empowered in that way, because of that, it was very hard to give up. And especially, I mean, giving that up means short-term discomfort for long-term reward, let's say, or long-term pleasure, long-term gratification, instead of short-term gratification, instant gratification. The instant gratification that comes from allowing yourself to react in the way that doesn't serve. And again, it's difficult, especially being patient with yourself, especially when you're used to maybe not being valued. And so that belief of not being valued gets reaffirmed by acting in, let's say, a toxic way, in a wounded way, right? That kind of reinforces the behavior. And yet, when we go through this transition, it's one of the hardest things to let go of. To say, like, to have that patience of like, okay, I'm going through the changes, I'm going through breaking down the habits, and I mean, you know, making yourself better is one way. It's, I don't know, that's still kind of judgment to like decide something is, or like label something as better or worse or good or bad or right or wrong, which is why we use the terms effective or ineffective or serves or does not serve. It's a little more objective, a little more distance, which is one of the other points, is to, I mean, that's really what meditation is. It's kind of observing your thoughts with a little bit more distance, which is why we breathe. Taking that time to breathe creates space, and sometimes that's all the difference that's needed, is just a little bit of space to say, whoa, I almost reacted in a way that maybe would have made me love myself less, that would have made other people love me less or love themselves less. And that's not, you know, it's not who I want to be. I want to be the one who makes people hate themselves or loves themselves less. Which is why, you know, if you've ever heard somebody talk about breathing techniques or seen one of my videos, you'll know that that's just something that I really stand by and fight for, are breathing techniques and breathing practices. Because it's all about creating space and distance from the woundedness so that we can see and trace back to its origin the woundedness, the hurt, the belief that we internalized that doesn't serve us. And simply becoming aware of it, we can start to choose differently. We can start to choose different responses. One of the other tools here is nonviolent communication. There are a lot of books on there on this exact topic. Audiobooks, books, Amazon, go for it. Highly recommend it. But it's broken down into 4 basic steps. Nonviolent communication. The first one being, well, let's say kind of like a mini step 0, being distance. Harping on distance here. Get to a place where you can feel what's come up and then come back and go to step one, which is communicating what the person or event, maybe communicating to yourself, triggered within you, what they did that you don't like. I'm looking at my notes here. What they did that you don't like, step one. Step two, how you feel about it. And this is, I mean, it's such a dumb thing that I overlooked for so long, was just Googling emotions, right? Just like list of emotions, so that we can become emotionally literate and grow our emotional intelligence. We can intellectualize all we want, but until we get familiar with what our emotions are, there's still, like, the emotion itself is still going to have power over us. I mean, knowledge is power here. Awareness is power. And we want to start to exercise that power and feel self-empowered. When we feel self-empowered, I mean, that's when, the seeds and the cultivation starts for self-esteem, self-worth, believing in ourselves, and in a way, maybe law of attraction, maybe magnetism, maybe looks definitely start to change, and personality, we start to become more attractive. That's kind of like a natural byproduct. It's if you want to start with that, go for it. But what they've done that you don't like, how you feel about it, and the needs that were going unmet. And this is kind of probably a touchy subject for some people. It was for me, in ways that I didn't even realize, is having needs. I'm the youngest of four, and my parents are immigrants. I'm a first generation American, and having needs is it's very much like a millennial thing. But I mean, thanks to my parents for clearing the way to coming to America and putting me into this environment, where now they're reaping the benefits from my emotional intelligence, because we get to sit down and talk and heal. There was a lot of resentment there. There was a lot of feeling silenced on my end, feeling worthless, them not investing time in me, and so me internalizing that I'm not worth investing time in from myself, and how that's changed over time. But recognizing and practicing acknowledgement that you have needs, practicing and acknowledging that you have needs, that you have wants, and that's awesome. That's awesome. Please have needs. One of the needs is to feel okay, is to feel safe. When we feel safe, when we feel secure, that's when we feel safe and secure to take risks, to, again, invest in ourselves. And that's just a spiral upward. Instead of like that spiral to shame, that shame spiral of like something going wrong and you beating yourself up about it because your parents didn't know how to communicate, so you internalize from them kind of ragging on you and beating you up about stuff, maybe even literally, as was the case a couple times. Like, instead of going to that shame spiral, you become the unconditional love that the moment needs, that you need in that moment as well. And so that becomes, like a victory spiral upward instead of a shame spiral downward, is meeting your own needs. Again, if nobody modeled the behavior of you being worth investing in, you might not know that you're not investing in yourself. So you're, in that way, you're not meeting your own needs. And when you start to meet your own needs, that's when everything changes, because that's what you start to put out. That's what you start to reverberate into the world, as like people start to see you as like, because you're investing in yourself, and maybe you're taking a little bit more pride in your appearance, in grooming, in health, in diet, in exercise, in knowledge, then people start to see you as someone worth investing in. As me, like someone who was, suicidal, I was convinced that I wasn't worth investing in. So whenever I accidentally showed that I was worth investing in, and somebody kind of like tried to, I would shut it down, because that leads to happiness, and happiness, the limiting belief was that happiness gets taken away, and that hurts. That disconnects from the feeling of safety. So here we go again. What they've done you don't like, how you feel about it, the needs that are going unmet, and your requesting a changed behavior in how you are treated, what you would benefit from the other person doing. And again, it's a request. So if they don't do it, that's on them. That's like, it's not their obligation to change, but it does inform you that you are in the environment of someone who is not willing to treat you in a way that is in your best interest, let's say, right? Maybe a cliche statement or phrase is, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you're treating yourself like shit, that's kind of like the vibe that you're going to be in, and the people that you're going to attract. And it's kind of simplistic to say that, like, when you're treating yourself well, you attract people who also treat yourself well. But in that transitionary state, you're going to lose people, and that's going to be scary. Right? It's the devil, to maybe not invest in yourself, not treat yourself in a way that's serving your best interest. And so there's going to be a space when you're on your own, when the new people haven't come in yet, because you're still grounding in, embodying the feeling, the knowledge that you are worth investing in. And so it feels lonely, and so there's a lot of pain, but that pain is what already existed within you. That pain is already what existed within you. And you got to feel it if you're going to heal it, if you're going to heal the wounds that were under the surface, that were being maybe medicated away. I used to smoke weed every day, especially after I got out of the Marines. Spent like probably 3 or 4 years stoned every day and drinking and acting a goddamn fool. And so, in the same way that you might, and I had to be forgiving for myself when I wasn't, being my ideal highest self. Let's say with the weed thing, giving that up is still somewhat of a process. It's still, it's been a while, but it kind of has gone for me in cycles of sitting in the discomfort of not having that kind of that pacifier, that self-medication tool, and feeling that discomfort. And in feeling that discomfort, I'm communicating to my body that I am able to live without this. Started out 10 minutes and just worked my way from there. Just sat in it for 10 minutes, set a timer on my phone. I don't need this anymore. Notes. And just like the anger thing of like choosing to breathe instead, choosing to do nothing instead of choosing to act on the anger, and sitting in the discomfort of the maybe like self-perceived, maybe misperceived, that word, impotence and powerlessness of, well, I'm used to feeling empowered when I can act on my anger, to being like, okay, that's not an option anymore. We'd rather do nothing than act on it. And being angry Victor and wanting to kind of, almost use anger as a form of self-medication to mask the woundedness. So whatever you're using to mask the woundedness, I would fight for that in those transitionary times. It's better to do nothing. It's better to breathe. It's better to get some space and some distance, fucking run away from whoever or whatever is triggering you, and then come back and be like, I just needed to clear my head, or I just needed to get some space. And if you lose people, that's part of it. I lost my anger. It's still there sometimes. I'm still working on it. It's still a work in progress, right? I'm not dead yet, so it's still a work in progress. It's a lifelong project. I gave up drinking. Gave up smoking cigarettes. Oh, that was a big one. But again, even as I was giving up cigarettes, as I was becoming mindful of why it was that I was smoking, what I get out of smoking, I was still smoking, right? I was still being gentle with myself. I was still being forgiving with myself. And so one of the hardest parts is, I think what I've been trying to say, don't leave it. I was just about to lose it, is maybe not even feeling worthy of being forgiven by others, or especially by yourself. It's most important to receive forgiveness from yourself. And what is forgiveness? It's just saying, it no longer serves for me to punish myself in this way, by carrying the grudge, by carrying the resentment, by carrying the hurt and woundedness. That's all forgiveness is just kind of giving in or surrendering to being gentle with yourself. I love breathing. I love regulating and managing my energy, my emotions, my thoughts. But it took a minute. It took a while. It took a lot of fucking it up. As Jake the dog from Adventure Time said, if you want to get good at something, if you want to be good at something, you kind of have to suck at it first. You have to eat crow. Right, that's what karma is. It's my own action, my own doing. I internalized those beliefs that were modeled to me. I did that. And even when my intuition was saying this is wrong, because I didn't know any other way, I still reaped the consequences of those of those beliefs that didn't serve. I'm working on dropping negative and positive and judgment. But on the other hand, all the healing that I've done and all the improvements in quality of life and relationships are also my doing. Because instead of running from holding myself accountable and taking responsibility, I started running towards it. I stumbled, I fell like a toddler learning to walk, but we don't beat up or degrade toddlers for not getting walking right when those muscles are just developing. It's a lot like that in terms of relating to oneself. In some ways, if you're watching this, you may be just now learning to walk, learning to run. It's okay to fall. And if you need help getting up, that's kind of like why I'm here. Aside from these videos, you can check out my website, iamvictor.com. Get on there, book an appointment, talk it out, unburden yourself. Brené Brown, author, said that if you put shame in a petri dish, what it would need to grow is silence, secrecy, and judgment. So the antidote to that is open communication and non-judgment. And that's what I offer. Get the poison out somehow. Get it into the light, speak it, write it down, journal it. That's number 5, journal. Breathing, meditating / observing your thoughts and just letting them be, just letting them go. Be the one who observes it, not the one who's identifying it with it or thinking it. Really quick, they're like clouds in the sky or traffic passing by, right? So you think of them like clouds, your awareness is the blue sky behind the clouds. It's always there. Maybe it's a little clouded. Sometimes it's sunny, nice. Think of it like a car. Don't go play it. Do not play in traffic, please. Don't try to get in the cars. Those aren't your cars. You're the one watching traffic go by. Breathing, meditation, nonviolent communication. Getting a little bit of distance. Physical, emotional, mental. And journaling. Number 5. I hope this helps. If this helps, please like, comment. I want to hear from you. Get the poison out. Get it in the comments. Share if you think someone would benefit from this. Here to help.